Recording in progress.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, Danielle, and thank you to all of you for letting me come in and spend some time with you. I appreciate it. Danielle asked me to talk a little bit today just about stress management, self-care during the holidays, because it's certainly a busy time of year for all of us. So I have a short presentation. I am by no means an expert in it, but I did look through some of the research and literature, so I feel like I need to do that. And I'm actually on my third go around caregiving personally, so I have a little bit of family experience. When I was a child, we took care of my grandmother for a multitude of years, and I was only, when she got sick, 8. So we certainly, my younger sister and I would go and help my mom and dad when we would stay with my grandma. And then my mom passed away a couple of years ago, but I helped take care of her. And I'm actually hoping to take care of my 92-year-old father now too, who is ill. And and each time was a little different. It's been a little different, and a very humbling experience. So hopefully today will be interesting for you. You all have a wealth of knowledge, and so we all learn from each other. And so feel free to add or provide additional suggestions, or if you think something I have on here is not right, feel free to correct me. And we'll go from there. And and certainly, boy, with no last night, it felt like Christmas last night as opposed to Halloween. So, do I press the arrow button?
Mm-hmm.
Am I not?
Good. Weird.
I already broke it. Sorry, Danielle. I'm like, just
It should, let me just.
I work at an organization called Memory Lane Care Services. We provide services for families who are caregiving. I've been there. We started in 2016, but have roots in the community since 1993, and I've been there since 1998. So. And I always put these slides in there. I don't have any conflicts of interest. Okay. Oh, it should work now? Oh, good. Oh, there we go. So today I was hoping to spend a little bit of time talking about the roots of stress for families around the holidays. I think holidays are a little stressful, even if you're not doing anything from a caregiving perspective. They also can be really fun though too. We'll talk about ways to alleviate stress and ways to have meaningful and fun interactions with the holidays when you're caregiving too, because I think sometimes you get so consumed. I've noticed with my dad, I go to his house if he's still living, he wants to stay home, and I go and I do, and I'm really trying to be a little bit more conscious about there's stuff I need to do right at his house, but also spending time with him too. And sometimes I get so consumed with the do, and then when I'm going home at night, I realize I didn't really have any good quality time with him. So something that, as I was reviewing this and putting this together, it was helpful for me too. So we know the holidays, certainly they can be stressful, but they can also be a joyful time too. It's a busy time of year. You go into the stores and there's lots of fun things to look at. But there's also times where it can be very, very joyful. Emotions tend to run high during holidays. People feel, reconnected, feelings of love and happiness and being in high spirits. Sometimes the time it's when you connect or reconnect with people. A lot of times people will maybe want to get in touch with you, so you might get more phone calls or more Christmas cards or Christmas emails. I think people are sending more emails now than they send Christmas cards anymore in the mail, and things like that. But it's a time to reconnect with families and friends, and celebrate traditions and rituals that you might have with holidays. But it also can be a time where there's additional stress because of the busyness. And it also can create, feelings of grief and disappointment because, holidays that you've had holiday traditions might be changing a little bit too, because of your caregiving experience. So what we do know is that, some of the factors, so sometimes it's helpful to, identify and understand, what are some of the factors that are causing stress. And I think sometimes identifying it can be really, really helpful so that you can figure out how you're gonna manage and cope with it. So, sometimes what we find that, factors that impact stress, are changes in lifestyles and traditions. Things, sometimes we hold on to things that are really, really important to us. When I was growing up, we used to my mom would have like just stacks of, remember the tins that you put your cookies in, of cookies. And, I tried to do that for a couple years and now I just do cookies and that's it. And some years I don't even do that. And I do them in February and that's okay. But, recognizing that sometimes those lifestyle changes and traditions that you really, really hung on to might just have to go away. But that can be hard because you're like, I have to make those cookies. I remember staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, this is nuts. Why am I doing that? So sometimes during the holidays too, we have lots of increased busyness. There's lots of activity. The days are shorter. So sometimes you have to compress things into a shorter period of time. There's just a lot more expectations from people. Sometimes people who are working, you might find that you're working longer hours. The traffic, sometimes is not very fun. There's extra traffic. Sometimes there can be increased stress from paying additional bills that come up around the holidays. Sometimes people worry about money or the lack of time that they have to have meaningful interactions. The responsibility of gift giving, that is just stressful in itself. I'm from a family of 8 and thank goodness several years ago, we decided we were going to stop buying gifts for each other. And that was a huge, huge relief. So, a couple years ago, I know with my dad, he's 92 and he's like, I really don't need anything, and so what I started doing is, which was stressful for me sometimes, but I would give him every year at Christmas, I'd make him a little gift certificate and, I'd give him a pie every month. I'd make him a pie. He wanted a homemade baked pie every month. And so, and boy, did he hold me to that. 1 month, he was gone for a couple weeks. He was out of town. This was a couple years ago. He's not traveling anymore, but he was gone for a couple of weeks and then I was gone for a couple of days. And so he said, I didn't get that pie last month. 2 for me this month. Okay. So I did because, you don't want to back out on your gift. But gift giving can be very, very stressful too. And sometimes too, people, you have that increased pressure of making holidays nice for everyone. I think particularly as women, that responsibility sometimes comes on us, whether that's, for our spouses or significant others, if we have children or if we have, cousins, nieces, nephews, other family members. And sometimes you feel that responsibility to make the holidays, maintain some of those traditions that are important to people. And we know that as women, there are some stronger impacts, and I certainly don't want to pick on men, but I think, women, they tend to take on a lot more responsibility, particularly when it comes to holidays in the home. I just read an article I thought was interesting that someone had done a study, and I thought this was so interesting, and it just talked about the amount of things that women tend to do, multitasking and things like that. And they looked at countries to see where if women, did the cooking more than men. And I think they identified 5 countries where it was more of a 50-50 split. And then all the other countries that they studied, the women did more of the cooking, which certainly on the holidays we do more cooking. There was one country they said where men, they found from their study, do more cooking than women. And they said that was Italy, which I thought was kind of funny. So it was kind of interesting. it was an interesting study. And I thought probably a good time around the holidays, particularly if, you're getting ready to cook Thanksgiving or whatever that might be. Women often take charge of the holiday celebrations. We prepare the meals. We often shoulder the burden if you're doing all the holiday shopping. The ones pets have often doing the decorating. We tend to often experience more stress than men. It's sometimes harder for us to relax around the holidays. And sometimes we fall into bad habits to manage our stress, like eating too much, maybe drinking too much alcohol, which, help us at the time, but it can have some long-lasting impact. We also know that there's financial stress from responsibilities and, time constraints. There can be buildup of credit card debt and, maybe keeping up with others and making sure that you're getting gifts. So that's another area a lot of times where we're seeing more stress too. And we do know too that caregiving around the holidays, particularly between Thanksgiving and New Year's, is really it's stressful for family members. And sometimes if you have family members coming in to visit, they might be feeling a little guilty because they haven't been so particularly helpful. And so sometimes they might bring up old family rooms or be critical of caregivers. Sometimes people feel, because you have to manage so many schedules, that it's difficult to get everyone together. Your care routines that you have, which are often really, really important, your caregiving, you have a routine and the holidays can really screw those up. And when that happens, then it can screw up everything for everyone throughout the day. You might be experiencing some grief and loss because your family members having some changes in health conditions, or they're having some lost abilities. You can't continue those family traditions. And maybe the ability of gathering and are restricted is restricted or it's limited. I know one of the things, so I mentioned I'm one of 8 kids, and so we've really had to rethink holidays over the years multiple times. As my parents got older, as my siblings started having children, and there's 26 grandkids, and it's really hard to fit 8 kids and their significant others and 26 grandkids into one house. It was particularly in December in Northern Ohio, right? So it's really hard to do. So these are some suggestions. And was there anything that was missed on that list that you would add? Is it, it's again, just trying to help identify that. I don't mean to stretch you out even more, but trying to identify the stress and then what we can do to help manage holidays and with self-care. So planning ahead is as much as you can is helpful. I don't know what you do without cell phones anymore. I know some of my siblings right now, we have because we're working together to take care of my dad, and we have a group text that we have, and that's so much more helpful. I can't, 10 years ago we all had to call each other on the phone. You're on the phone for 30 or 35 minutes where you can get a text done in 5 to 10 minutes or send an email, which is nice. Sometimes creating a to-do list or having a calendar in place can be really, really helpful. That maybe if you have stuff you have to do, to put it on your to-do list or space it out throughout the calendar. Trying to chunk things, so, if you've got 10 things to do, don't try and get it all in one day, but maybe spread it out over a week or 2. Sometimes creating a list of activities or help you need or meals, or that someone else can do for you. Sometimes family members, they want to be helpful, but they don't know how to be helpful, or they just, for whatever reason, might not be able to sit and actually give that hands-on care to someone. But there's other ways sometimes family members can be helpful. We see that at our adult day program, where there might be one family where the person lives with them, but then there's another family who, runs all the errands, does all the shopping, and there's another family member who takes care of the financial stuff, just to kind of spread stuff about. So, and during the holidays, maybe there's things that you can do. Give people lists of, activities or things to do. I know when my mom was really sick and my siblings would come in from out of town, and they'd be like, well, what should we do with mom? And I said, I think the best thing you can do is spend time with her, you know? And then let me go home and get my laundry done, you know, those types of things. Putting together a support network, you know, of people who understand, have been through things. You have someone to listen to, just to talk to without giving you advice or telling you what you have to do. Sometimes we just need someone to listen to us, you know, and that can make all the difference in the world. And I know this is really, really hard, but maintaining, the, you know, health and well-being of yourself as a person. Sometimes it's really easy to put yourself at the bottom of the list. In fact, I think that's what happens most of the time. But you know, what are some little things that maybe you can do? You might not be able to do everything, but slowly kind of put things in place. So, you know, I've tried to structure, a lot of times I'm at my dad's house until late in the evening, like, you know, 10, 11 o'clock at night. So I've kind of stopped doing anything at 7:38 in the morning if I don't have to for work. And then I make sure that I like to drink French press coffee. You ever had French press? It's really strong. It's really good. And I make it every morning and I drink a pot of it. And I just give myself a little bit of time to just sit, you know, have my coffee and just look outside the window and watch the birds or do whatever, just to, you know, kind of give myself some peace of mind too. And I learned that because I didn't do that with my mom, you know, and so I'm trying really hard to do that right now. You know, it's okay to say no and not celebrate things or not do things or, you know, not this year or task it to someone else, you know. If they really, really want to do something, maybe they can take it over too. And I know it's hard, but accepting help can be hugely helpful too. So, in whatever way you can. Sometimes that's easier said than done, and it might just be someone cuts the grass or shovels the snow, or, you know, picks up the milk at the grocery store for you. So it's one less thing you have to do. Something about managing the holidays is thinking through ahead of time, visits and celebrations. Sometimes smaller numbers of people, particularly when someone's, you know, really gets tired very easily, or maybe has some cognitive issues. Sometimes too many people can be too much. So maybe kind of thinking through what's the best way so that everyone enjoys the holidays, whether that's, you know, be the person who's coming to visit, the person you're caring for, as well as yourself. Even though it might have been that everyone used to be together, it just might not be practical to do that anymore. It doesn't mean that, you know, people have to stay for 5 or 6 hours too. Sometimes shorter visits are better. You know, I know sometimes my dad will tell me, he's like, okay, you can go home now. And I'm like, am I hovering too much? He's like, a little bit. So, you know, so sometimes, you know, it's okay. So, and then sometimes it's like, will you stay the night tonight? And so, you know, one of the things I've learned is I always keep a bag in my car. And if I need to stay, I stay. And if he tells me you can go now, I go. So, sometimes sending out, if you are someone that sends a holiday note or email, you know, you can give people an update, you know, in the email. Sometimes it's easier to write it out and have it on a piece of paper or in an email you send to someone, as opposed to having to tell them, you know, what's going on, particularly if, you know, a person's changing or the health conditions are, you know, complicated. I know sometimes when people ask me, well, why is that happening? It's tiring for me to have to explain it. So, and I know they're doing it out of concern, but it can be emotional. It's okay. I know that people are still having a lot of flu and colds and COVID and stuff like that. So if you want people to wear a mask, particularly if you know they've, you know, had a cold or something like that, it's okay to do that, you know, to do that. I think that, you know, just to kind of measure, remember you need to take care of your health, too, and the person you're caring for. Sometimes respite services can be really helpful, whether that someone comes into the home or someone, you go somewhere, your person goes somewhere to stay with someone else. But respite can be hugely helpful too. And maybe exploring support services from, you know, current, places. I know the senior center here does a lot of wonderful things, you know, the evening meals, there's home care and hospices, care packages. I'm just amazed. I know, I think with my dad, we've tried several different, meal programs, because the first one wasn't real crazy about, the second one he wasn't real crazy about, but there's so many options out there that's been really nice. So, you know, looking at different services, I'm always amazed at what's out there that I didn't know. And I know Danielle and her team keeps a good eye out on everything that's out there. And then if you're going to visit someone or providing some tips to some families, your family members or friends to visit is, you know, the visit doesn't have to be perfect. If a person falls asleep during the visit, it's okay. Sometimes you can start new traditions and create new memories. One of the things I started doing with my dad, I was never really a big sports person. But over the last couple years, you know, we watch sports together, then we can talk about sports. So like, you know, we've been watching the World Series. A couple years ago, we started watching women's basketball, you know, so there's different things that we've been doing. So we've started some new traditions, and I actually found that they're actually sports aren't bad, and I kind of like them. So it's something that, because my daughter's like, you watch sports, and I'm like, well, you know, Grandpa likes it, and so now we do that. So you know, so sometimes starting some new traditions and new memories can be, you know, really, really helpful. I think sometimes, it's really easy, when people come to visit to maybe not talk to the person who you're caring for, the person that's ill. Because it's hard sometimes to talk to them, or that people feel bad or they don't understand. So figuring out ways to include and engage the person can be really, really helpful. Last week, my daughter came home to see my dad, because my kids are trying to come, because they don't live in town anymore. They're trying to come home to see him, and we watched a movie from the 1960s that my daughter was like dying laughing, called, I had never seen it before, that my dad had, we dug it out of a shelf. And it was called, Magnificent Men and Their Flying Machines.
Oh,
Yeah. And my daughter thought it was hilarious, you know, and so my dad's like, well, I'll will it to you. How's that? And my daughter's like, oh. So, but you know, so and so when my daughter comes home in the holidays, he's got, The Amazing Race, I think it is, or something like that, The Great Race, or something that we're gonna watch that time. So, you know, sometimes, you know, starting new memories can be really helpful too. And then that we're engaging the person. I had mentioned smaller numbers of people at gatherings, you know, sometimes can be really helpful. Nowadays too, I think, you know, utilizing technology, if people, I know my sister got remarried a couple weeks ago. And my dad couldn't go to the wedding, and so they FaceTimed with him, you know, and they put him up on the screen, and he gave a toast, you know, and things like that. Sometimes, you know, and so something like that can be really helpful. The one thing that's important when you use technology is to try and make sure you do a tech check, because, you know, something always happens with technology. So, you know, working through some of that, but technology can be really helpful too. It was really, I think, meaningful for my sister that he did that. You know, he wrote up a speech, and I didn't know he did it. I found out after the fact. But I was able to make it to the wedding, which was pretty cool. Sometimes keeping a log of holiday activity too, just a simple notebook or something, because it's something you can revisit, you know, and then other people can read it too when they come visit, can sometimes be helpful. You can include pictures or details. You can do all that on your phone now, you know, you can take pictures, and they have, you know, little notepads and things like that. So sometimes planning an activity which can be shared with everyone and done together can be fun. You may need to simplify things a little bit. I know, my sister's planning to have Thanksgiving this year, and one of the things I suggested to her is like, you know, it's okay to use paper plates, you know. So I'm gently kind of trying to encourage her to do that this year, because I don't want to wash dishes, and a lot of my siblings and grandkids are coming home because they want to see my dad, you know, and so I'm like, maybe we just need to do something like that. So sometimes simplifying things can be a little bit easier. Or like last year, I bought the rolls instead of making the rolls, you know, stuff like that. Not really that big. So you just go like, oh, I'm telling you. So sometimes reminiscing can be, you know, a great activity that everyone can do, and you know, you can sometimes learn things. I know a couple, weeks ago, I was at my dad's and he was watching TV and he showed me, he's like, oh, look at this commercial. And it was a commercial for socks that had zippers in it that you can, buy and you know, you can put little stuff in the zippers. And he's like, my mom used to make me those when I was little. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, it's zippers, there was little pockets in my socks when I went off to school. I was like, I had my lunch money in there, you know, but it was kind of funny and I never knew that, you know, and so sometimes you just like, I have like little nuggets, things sometimes that you cherish that you never know sometimes from those things. So a multi-sensory approach, I know that Danielle had music going on, you know, but sometimes doing things that not only stimulates, you know, I think I say like 90% of communication is actually nonverbal, right? So, you know, what you can do to stimulate smells. I try and cook, you know, if you have that smells at home or put something even just to make, you know, something that smells good, just so that, you know, you've got, you know, a multi-sensory approach can be helpful. And sometimes thinking ahead to share a funny or warm story, you know, a picture or something, that, you know, that can generate, you know, positive memories and good discussions can be really, really helpful. But sometimes I try and, you know, rack my brain about, you know, things to talk to. If you have a person in a care center or a hospital or something during the holidays, sometimes, you need to check the rules, but I think a lot of times places are pretty flexible about like, if you want to have a lot of facilities and things like dining rooms that you can use, to have a meal together or visit. You might just check about scheduling, time, to come visit and just what, you know, trying to figure out ways to include holidays in, care centers and hospitals and everything. So I had a friend, I thought this was she, I did not come up with this, but when I was going through this presentation with my coworker and she said, you should put in that slide about what Pat Hannes used to say. So Pat Hannes worked at hospice in Northwest Ohio. She passed away a couple years ago, but she was a dear friend to me and my coworker Cheryl. And one of her things that she always told caregivers to do is think about things in these three buckets. Was what is it that you need to do, and what is it that's nice to do, and what is it that's not to do, right? And sometimes it's okay to do the nutty things, but sometimes I know over the years, I'm like, why am I doing this? This is nuts, you know, but sometimes. So my friend Cheryl said, my coworker Cheryl said, you need to put in Pat Hansen's quote for today. And I just wanted to share that because I think it's easy to remember, and it's kind of a, you know, I think a nice little, way to check off, okay, am I gonna do this? Am I not gonna do this? Or is it, why am I doing this? It's making me nuts. So I thought that picture that's not my dog, but I thought it was cute. So there's my contact information. You're always welcome to call me. And I know Danielle has the PowerPoint if you want it. I always make sure my PowerPoints are available because sometimes people want stuff, but there's a lot of good resources online about caregiving and the holidays in particular. And I think that is I didn't.
Could you go back one more word?
Here's my phone number and my email. But you probably all know this already, don't you? That probably was not new to you, but hopefully it was. You know, I'm a big believer in trying to figure out, okay, what's causing my stress, and then a lot of times, once I figure out what it is, I can figure out what to do with it. Whether it's going to talk to someone or going through Pat Hannes's list of things, or trying to figure out. I hope this was helpful. I did bring a little bit of information. There's a couple really good handouts. One of them is from an organization in Cleveland about holiday stress as a caregiver and managing holidays. And there's one from the National Institute on Aging. I printed a couple of those out. I also printed out a little bit of information about our organization. Our organization, we do have weekly education programs that you can join virtually or in person. And it rotates every week what the topic is. So I just brought the November programs if you're interested in them. If you're looking for things to do in your caregiving, we do a monthly, it's a art museum tour. It's with the Total Museum of Art, where you can take your person that you're caring with to, it's kind of a smaller art museum tour, but people really enjoy that, and we have a really good cafe there.
Yeah, it's in our newsletter.
Is it? Oh, good. Now, and then the other program that you might be interested in, is we have a program called Care Coaching. It's a free program, where, caregivers will get connected with, one of our social workers, and they just kind of check in on you periodically, see how you're doing, get you connected with resources. I know Danielle does a lot of that too, but sometimes it's nice to just have someone call you as opposed to you calling them. So. But was there anything you would add or anything else that you think that